introduce myself. I'm Laura Reiser. So I worked a little bit. I worked a little bit on the BC Natural Gas workforce strategy stuff last fall.
Okay.
So and we might be up that way in the spring, trying to talk to some of our others. So we'll see what.
So who do you work with?
I work with Greg on his kind of research chair stuff. So once in a while he loans me the CDI to do some stuff as well. So.
Perfect.
Anyways.
Good. Well, nice to meet you.
Yes, yes. No, just it's actually
Fighting that cold, are we? Keep raring to get the sightseeing project going. It's halfway. Halfway. That's
Oh, that's pretty dark. Yeah.
Wow. That just creates all sorts of interesting. Yeah.
Or even to just
Just watch what I say. But, yeah. That's right.
There's two people that have been calling to me for many years. But like that, if you're like, wow. I don't even want to see. I don't want to go to work. My car. I don't want to shop all these taxes. I don't want to see. I say, I don't care what you do. Just move it. You know, and I'm like, wow, really? Wow, really do live in Pleasantville. I'll tell you, that's what I said, right? So, you know, it's like,
Yep.
someone asked me for money. Is that right? He's gonna pay back savings, but we're gonna make a thing. It's counterproductive.
I keep thinking of things that I need to tell.
Did I just spark you on something? I hope so. I hope I sparked you.
Let you know that they started
Just trying to
They just started.
Okay, thanks.
No, we haven't said anything else.
They're still before arriving, so I thought I'd give it like 2 minutes.
Sure. Yeah.
You get to sit down first, right?
That's
I'm
perfect.
sitting first. You're talking first. Yes, of course. Okay.
It is great.
Well,
know what? I'm not sure. I don't know where he went. Well,
Good evening, everyone. I think we'll get started. We might still welcome some more people, but I'll honor the time that all of you have come here for 7 o'clock. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 2015 Community Speaker Series hosted by the Community Development Institute at UNBC. My name's Jennifer Hall, and I work with the Community Development Institute, which is a mouthful, so we shorten it to CDI. I work as a Community Development Project Manager, and I'll be playing the role of MC for this evening, so it's my pleasure to welcome all of you. I'd like to start by recognizing that we are on the traditional territory of the Lheidli and to express thanks for the stewardship of this land that we share together. I'd also like to say thank you very much to the Prince George Public Library, to Janet Marin, who's our chief librarian here, and to Nathan, who has set up the live streaming. We're live on YouTube as we speak, and to the rest of the team for helping us set this up and support this event. I'm proud to say that this year marks the 10th year of the Community Speaker Series. So this is, as of this year, officially a 10-year tradition. We work in the CDI to ensure access to information, to support community and economic development, and this event, this educational opportunity, is part of that speaker series. We do a fall series and a spring series every year, so we're pleased to have Mayor Lori Ackerman here as our spring speaker. I'm sure that we're all looking forward to her presentation. So at this point, I will invite the acting mayor, Terry McConaughey, from the city of Prince George, to come up and say a few words of welcome. She was elected to the council here in Prince George in 2014, and she's the executive officer for the Canadian Home Builders Association, and a member of the Nechako Rotary Club, and also the councillor who is appointed to the board of the public library. So we're pleased to have her here to say some words of welcome.
thank you. Good evening, everybody. It is truly a pleasure to be here on behalf of Mayor Hall and the rest of my council folks. It is nice to be here. As Jennifer said, I was lucky enough to be elected to City Council this past round in November. And so that was on November 15th. Then on November 16th, I realized that honor didn't come with all the knowledge that I thought was just gonna come pouring into my head as a result. To be honest with you, and here's a secret, I do my homework, and I do my reading, and I do my research. But basically, folks, I am flying by the seat of my pants on a day-to-day basis. So, when an opportunity like this arises, to hear someone like Mayor Ackerman speak on something that is very important and dear to all citizens of Prince George, and it's very important to someone in my new position now, this is just, this is great. And couldn't come at a better time, Mayor Ackerman, and without further ado, we'll get you the lady up here that you all came to really hear, and I want to thank you very much for your time.
There actually is a bit more further ado that we're going to have in a minute here. And the further ado will be courtesy of Dr. Greg Khalsa, who is co-director of the Community Development Institute. So he's going to provide a bit of an introduction to the CDI and to the talk tonight.
It's always dangerous to let academics start talking because we never know when to stop. It's a pleasure to be here. Of course, we carry at UNBC an awesome responsibility when the people of the North recognized that the world was changing, the economy was changing, our demography was changing, and our environments were changing. They needed a tool to help them lever into a successful 21st century, and one of the outcomes of that debate was the creation of UNBC. And those who've come and toiled at UNBC have taken that responsibility seriously to try to address the pressing issues that we're facing and to try to illuminate some pathways forward so that people can make decisions, they can make choices, but they'll be informed and they'll be aware when they make those decisions and choices. So a little over 10 years ago, having toiled for many years working with small communities struggling with sometimes optimistic and sometimes cataclysmic changes, we realized we needed something more lasting as a vehicle in order to mobilize our research in use and to communities. We needed a more robust platform in order to support dialogues, to help build partnerships in communities so that places could achieve the things they wanted to achieve. And we also needed a more robust platform in order to support action, actually working with communities as they went through periods of transformation and change. And that platform is the Community Development Institute. As Jen said, we just finished celebrating our 10th anniversary. Tonight is our 20th Community Speaker Series, and Lori, you're our 25th community speaker. So along with our 25th anniversary for the university, you get to be speaker 25. So there you go. Maybe Rob will get you one of the big poster banners that you can take off. One of the things that we tried to do is to try to address the issues that are relevant. So over time, the CDI has done work on seniors issues, youth issues, on housing, healthcare, social service provision. We've created emergency transition toolkits for places when their economies went down. We've been working with communities where there's tremendous upswing in activity, economic boom, to try to help them work through those types of topics. We've dealt with housing issues. We've dealt with community service provision issues. And so tonight, looking at community transformation and change is a real terrific opportunity to welcome a real leader, a woman that I've known for a long, long time now, to come and talk about her experiences and some of the amazing things that Fort St. John has achieved just in the last few years. And I'm sure that in the questions afterward, you'll get a chance to ask her to brag a little bit more about those kinds of things. So on behalf of the CDI and in continuing response to that awesome opportunity and responsibility that people of the North have entrusted to the university, I thank you very much for coming.
So now we get to what we've actually been waiting for, and it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Lori Ackerman. She's been a resident of the Peace Region since 1980, with most of that time spent in Fort St. John. She was first elected to City Council in 2005 and has continued since then to represent her community on many local, regional, and provincial boards and committees. In 2011, she was elected as mayor in Fort St. John, and she's been appointed to the province's local government RCMP Contract Management Committee and to the steering committee for the BC Mayor's Caucus as well. She's the chair of the Northern Development Initiative Trust Northeast Regional Advisory Committee. These are a mouthful. And in 2009, she was nominated by her peers to, in fact, be the elected official to represent Northeast BC on the NDIT board. Over the years, she's just continued to be an active volunteer in emergency social services, Scouts Canada. She was a founding member of the United Way cabinet in Fort St. John. She's chaired the community's homeless shelter committee, And in recognition of all of her volunteer work, she's twice received the Queen's Jubilee Medal and has also been awarded the Silver Acorn for distinguished service for scouting. We're very honored to have you here to speak with us, Mayor Ackerman, and I invite you to please come up now. Thanks.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, absolutely. And I just want to start, first of all, by begging your forgiveness. I had the pleasure of snuggling with one of my grandbabies over the Easter weekend, and along with snuggling, you get colds. So I do have a little bit of the sniffles, but each time you hear me sniffle, know that I had my grandbaby in my arms when I got it. And that is the most important job on the face of the earth, because we are creating community not for us. We're creating community for the kids. So I know we do have a time frame here, but I'll tell you right now that I can talk forever, and there are some of you who are here who can attest to that. I remember as a young child being told I was loquacious, and I thought that was just lovely until I found out that it actually meant that I was just talkative. So a little bit about myself so you know. I've lived in all 4 Western provinces. I'm a firm believer that Fort St. John is home and will be for a long time because all 3 of my children live there and my 3 grandchildren are there. And I have warned the young gentlemen that are with my daughters that they will not take them from Fort St. John, or I will find them. And my husband has 3 children as well. One of them lives there with 3 other grandchildren of ours, and we have 4 other grandchildren that live in Calgary and Texas. So we're busy grandparents and very dedicated. I was raised that you get from your community what you give to your community and not 1 iota more. So I posted something on Facebook the other day that said, before you start complaining, have you volunteered yet? So I just challenge people when they start complaining about things that if you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. And so as we move forward in Fort St. John, it is an opportunity to inform and educate our residents on some of the issues so that we can have an educated, informed conversation about what the issues are and how we're going to resolve them. I'll tell you right now, we never go to Victoria with a problem because they'll just make it worse. We go down with solutions. So tonight I'm going to share with you our recipe for some of the successes that we've had. But I'll tell you right now, you're going to have to take that and Prince Georgize it. Because we are 2 different communities. And although we have a lot of things in common, one being that we are this side of hope, which, and I tell my sister who lives in Chilliwack that from our perspective, she's beyond hope. We have a lot of things in common, but we have a lot of differences as well. So when I do this presentation, I don't have very many slides. Really, it is just to keep me on track. And the opportunity to see a lot of the documents that I'm going to be speaking about, we put them all onto placespeak.com, which is an online conversation tool. And so I would just offer that to you if you want to go on to placespeak.com and register. Fort St. John uses that tool quite often to have those conversations with our community. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about history because it's important to understand municipalities. That's not us. A community is not just an overgrown village. It really does have its own economy. Goods are made, they're traded there, you have people coming in and out. So historically, a good place to put a community was on a navigable river or a river crossing, or perhaps even where 2 rivers met. So growth within a community can be seen like rings in a tree. I was walking the streets of Prince George today, and I noticed that you have the same thing that we have. Pavement, where cement should be in your sidewalks. And I will bet you that if you went back and looked at the date when that pavement was put on your sidewalks rather than cement, you're going to find out it was a downturn in your economy when you couldn't afford cement. So visitors see that when they're walking. I don't see it in Fort St. John anymore, but I noticed it. So I had to write it down here, pavement and cement, because I know we have it. When Fort St. John was broke, we put pavement where the cement should have been. A lot of you are probably not aware that in 1979, Fort St. John was Trade and Commerce Magazine of the Community of the Year. And in 1980, we were just about broke. And that was because of the National Energy Board. And when I tell people that I live in Fort St. John, just north of Ghost Town, and they go, "Where's that?" Because we have grown beyond that. The rings of the tree, we have grown beyond that. So the ebb and flow of municipalities and villages and towns over the years have been impacted by threats of war, when people crowded into the walled markets for protection. And then in peaceful times, when agriculture was needed, they would go back out in the fields to provide that commodity that was so much needed for growth. And then periodically there would be famines, where they would all crowd back into the walled areas again, and all of a sudden, famine would strike. Or sorry, not famine, but epidemics. And we've all heard in our history lessons about the plagues, etc. Sanitation became an issue. And so all of a sudden we now have people saying to the town fathers, could you clean that up? Could you bring in the fresh water, take out the dirty water, and take the garbage out? And that's how we got water and wastewater and solid waste. So now we toss in with that roads and bridges and all sorts of things. So fast forward, this is what we're still facing. And you have to also keep in mind that your municipality walks the lines of regulations. I was just chatting with Andrew Curiata this afternoon from CBC, and I said some of the things that were regulated, like who here cannot see the lines on the road? Do you know why? Like, and it's a problem in Fort St. John too, because the senior level of government said you can't use that type of paint anymore, it's hurting the fish. Well, I'm okay. I don't want to hurt the fish. But the paint that we now have to use doesn't last through a winter climate. But doesn't matter what kind of paint you use, still costs the same to run that machine down there. So, but now your municipalities don't have lines that last. So we are starting to use this kind of thermal paint that lasts, but you can only do so much. So since government is known as the great equalizer, we all get to contribute to the taxes for all of those services. Before becoming the mayor, I was asked by one of the local churches if I would narrate the Christmas story. Well, of course, local government elections are in mid-November, so there I was, mayor-elect. And I'm narrating the Christmas story, and what's the first words publicly out of my mouth? And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world would be taxed. You gotta have a sense of humor. So we fast forward, and here we are today. So this is downtown Fort St. John. Is there anyone here that hasn't been to Fort St. John? Okay, we're changing that this summer. So Fort St. John is BC's second largest community north of Kamloops. Our last CA census was over 26,000, which of course triggered a lot of franchises to come in. We are one of 4 cities in Canada, north of the 56th parallel. Yellowknife, Whitehorse, and Fort McMurray are the other 3. We have Winter City development guidelines. I drive to my sister's place, as I mentioned, in Chilliwack, and I look at all the lovely boulevards, and I try and picture that with 6 feet of snow on it. And that's how you have to think when you live in a winter community. We are in Canada's most northern agricultural area. A lot of people are not aware that we are on the lee side of the mountains. We are on the prairies. We are culturally, economically, and geographically attached to Alberta. We are just jurisdictionally attached to British Columbia because of a lazy cartographer. That's my theory, not fact. So we have a very strong forestry industry. We have oil, but predominantly we have natural gas. We are the region that will provide the natural gas, put it in a pipeline, and they can ell it when it gets to the other end. But we, right now, continue to drill for domestic use. And we are on the Montney Basin, so we have a rich, liquids rich. And for those of you who don't understand that, the natural gas that comes out has the propane and the butane attached to it, so that gets pulled out, processed, and it's a value add. So we need to make sure that we continue to do that. We are growing at just under 3% a year. We are probably the only community that needs to build new schools. In our elementary schools right now, we have 16 seats available. That's it. 3% growth rate, that's not a lot. And we have a considerable economic opportunity. As the extraction will increase, when the LNG industry gets up and running, there is a lot of spin-off opportunities there as well. Most of the people that live there were either born there or they're on the 2-year plan and they got hooked. And they've been lifers ever since. We also have the Pomeroy Sports Centre. Some of you may have heard it during the Canada Winter Games. It's one of the long track, the second one in Canada, indoor long track speed skating oval. Glad to have been there for you guys. Yes. I completely understand the desire to have everything here in Prince George. But to have been able to support you in that and make sure that we were able to provide those athletes with a good experience, I think was foremost the important thing. When they arrived at the Pomeroy Sports Centre, I don't know if you know, but we have a high school in that center as well. Those kids came out and formed 2 lines and were cheering for the kids when they came off the bus. That blew them away. They all left Fort St. John with a toque that had our Fort St. John logo on it, and it said, "Keep calm and skate on." And we really had fun. We did have a good time. And my staff were down here. So, but it was the 3rd national speed skating event that we've held. So I think we did a pretty good job. It was good to be there. So I want to say that, when we look at the global market, and because that's what we live in, we all live in a resource municipality, and we have to look globally. When we look at what's happening over in Europe, what's happening over in Greece, it's important that municipal leaders cannot sit down and watch the world go by. We can't idly do that. We must, by virtue of our role as elected officials, here's a lesson for each, pick up the mantle and move our nation forward. We have the ability to haul this province and this nation out of the fiscal hole that we're in. And we need to be able to do it by keeping our skilled professionals at home. And you're probably wondering why I'm getting to this, and I will, but municipalities are still the economic centers in this nation. And this is a level of government that relies on property taxes. And I need to point out a few things. 92% of your dollars go to the senior levels of government. And municipalities are doing everything that they are doing on 8% of your tax dollars. And this sliver of funds needs to be dealt with efficiently. Municipalities are also the catch basins of all of the issues that fall through the cracks. So when there's a policy change at the senior levels of government, we're watching what's going to come down the pipe. Municipalities are like a 5,000-piece puzzle. If you're missing one piece, it distracts from the whole. But municipalities can't afford to be everything to everyone. No municipality can. So that's why different municipalities have different amenities, they have different cultures. And although we can't be everything to everyone, we can be a whole lot of stuff to a whole lot of people. And that's where we need to focus. So, vision, focus, and implementation are the necessary arts of creating community. Vision, know where you're going and believe in it. Focus, you may have to climb over some logs, you may have to walk around a swamp, but you keep your eye on the prize. Don't get distracted by shiny things, because that'll happen. You'll get ad hoc grants coming out from senior levels of government that want to showcase all the fabulous stuff that they're doing. But that will distract communities. And we can't operate that way. They say these are 50-cent dollars. Well, what are we throwing our 50 cents at? Is it something that our community seriously wants, or is it a ribbon cutting opportunity? Implementation. You have to create an implementation plan that is achievable. You have to follow through. You can't just leave a binder on the shelf. If any one of you golf, you'll know that if you're not going to follow through on that golf swing, don't bother starting. Because that's half of it right there, if not more, I've been told. Could be why mine doesn't work. At any rate, you need to understand those as I move on. Boom, bust, echo. Building strong communities means understanding the world and the history. Has anyone here read the David Foote, Boom, Bust, Echo? And you know what? So really we're talking about the boomers, and then they quit having children, and so a lot of industries that started up bust because there was no babies around, and then there was the echo. So the boomers are retiring. Do you guys know how many retirees you have in Prince George? I can tell you the CDI can do that work for you. They did a senior study for Fort St. John. We know that the fastest growing demographic, even though in the first 3 weeks of our new hospital being open, we had 33 babies born. Yes, none of them were mine. So, but our fastest growing demographic is seniors. So accessibility is a huge issue for us when we look at our downtown revitalization. So they are retiring. They want to stay in Fort St. John because their children are there, their grandchildren are there, their social network is there. So we have to start accommodating for the seniors and for accessibility, because your body is only as good as it is right at this moment, because things could change 5 minutes from now. The echoes, of course, and all of their subsequent generations have been tagged with a variety of X's and Y's, and I prefer to refer to them as my future residents, because I'm going to go out and get them. We need them. We need their knowledge. We need their skills. I need them to take my industries and make them more efficient, effective, and leave a lighter footprint. I need intellectual property being created within my industries, and that generates wealth, and that wealth is, we have in Canada knowledge on how to deal with the oil and gas industry in extreme climates. Do you know it was one of our residents in Fort St. John that worked in Russia to get their oil and gas industry started? They came to us to get the policies, environmental policies, and the framework around how to regulate the oil and gas industry for Mongolia. I just had the United Nations in my office before I drove down here, like just before I drove down, yesterday afternoon. They are here to see what it is we do. We have a world-class oil and gas commission that is really not understood this side of the Rockies. And you're welcome to pop up, and I'll take you for a tour. Seriously, I will. I have my personal protective equipment, and if anyone's interested in understanding the industry, I will find someone to explain it to you. So, how do I attract those professionals? That's what we're here to talk about. Because you want to talk about downtown revitalization. If you're not creating a community that's going to attract them, they can go anywhere they want to. So the official community plan is foundational to moving forward. It is the vision of the community that gets you to the mountaintop that you aspire to. I know that the communities in the Northwest are redoing theirs, and really your official community plan should be revisited every 5 to 7 years. So in the next 2 years, within the next 2 years, we will be revisiting ours, because it is 2011 that it was done. This sits on my desk. This is the guide that will move us forward. So part of being efficient with that sliver of funds that we have means engaging your community residents in every way possible. In order to do this, this was done using face-to-face sessions. We use MetroQuest for our 2020 vision. And MetroQuest has evolved considerably since we've used them, but we're going to use them again for the fringe area official community plan for the regional district. And they have a way of talking to a room like this, showing different types of housing, for example. And you sit there with your little voter pad and you decide what type of housing that you want, and it's just like SimCity. And it pops up showing you the community you're gonna get, and they've already fed all the information into it. They're gonna tell you what your taxes are gonna be. So if all of you guys want acreages and you want water and sewer, it's gonna tell you what you're gonna have to pay to get it. So, very interesting tool. Our official community plan gave us 4 guiding principles. And those guiding principles, every time something crosses our desk, we can look at it through the lens of these 4 guiding principles. Economic prosperity, environmental sustainability, social inclusion, and cultural vitality. We have such a robust official community plan. I have people from communities way larger than ours going, how did you get that? We engaged our community. We engaged our residents. We educated them, we informed them, and we empowered them to tell us what they want in community. So we are working on a master transportation plan right now, as well as a regional master recreation plan. You're gonna find all the information on those on that placespeak.com website. So I'm not gonna discuss those 2 right now, because I wanna focus on 2 of the other ones that we have done. And this one was a conversation. This is a very divisive topic in Fort St. John, Site C. It is the only region where BC Hydro refers to it as a proposed project, because everywhere else it's a project, it's gonna happen. Our council decided, so I was elected as mayor in 2011. We hadn't had conversations with BC Hydro to this point. Our staff had had technical conversations with them at that point. Excuse me, I'm just gonna take a sip here. So we chose to be proactive and promote and protect our community. I said, Noah wasn't in favor of the flood, but he built an ark. We are a municipal government. We are governed by the Community Charter and the Local Government Act. This is outside of my sphere of influence. Only salmon swim upstream to die. Why should we? Let's work with and see what we can do to ensure that our community is better off as a result of this project. And being efficient means engaging the residents, and so that's what we did. We took the official community plan that we had created, and we developed some principles that we thought were important to the community and to the city as a corporation. Then we went out to the community and said, if this happened, how would the services you receive from the community impact you, and how would the services you provide to the community impact you? For example, 10 years ago, my husband would get up on a Saturday morning and we'd have our coffee and he'd give me a kiss. He'd say, I'm going to get my hair cut, and he'd be back in half an hour. And he'd already been to Canadian Tire. Now he gets up and he says, okay, I'll see you, I'm going to get my hair cut. And it's hours later because he's in a lineup. So things will happen, and sooner or later another barber shop will open up, and that, that will even out a little bit. What we did with this one was we really went above and beyond with community engagement. We used PlaySpeak, we used our Facebook page, Twitter, face-to-face meetings. That's a summer I'll never get back. I went to every playground. I talked to every parent that was there, every grandparent was there, went to every Rotary Club, Chamber of Commerce, every business association we had. I went to every non-profit organization that we had. I went to every agency that we partner with, School District 60, Northern Health, the RCMP. We did such intense work on this. We won an international award and 2 national awards for the work that we did on this. So this remarkable conversation gave us a foundation to move forward with, knowing that we had the community in front of mind. And any proponent that comes walking through my doors, and I just had a chat last Friday with Petronas, I know how my community feels about the impact of industrial development. So I can have a very informed conversation with them And before you ask, we're continuing to work with BC Hydro on a community measures agreement. So the next one is the downtown planning process. We call it Energized Downtown, and we're planning for action. So it is a priority. We've heard it several times. We heard it during our official community plan. We heard it during our Let's Talk Site C. The first step that we needed to do was a technical review. We needed to know what kind of bones the old girl had. So we found out what kind of water pressure could go through those pipes, which means, you know, what kind of fire suppression we could have. We needed to understand that what kind of shape those pipes were in, etc. Because as you walk downtown, you don't realize the maze that's underneath that pavement. And it is your municipal government that's maintaining all of that. So we have discovered that despite decline in the past few years, our downtown has great potential, including a lot of successful businesses and amenities. So, three phases. Phase 1 was the technical review, as I mentioned, and that is done. We have good bones in our downtown core. Phase 2 was a community stakeholder and a collaborative community-based process to energize our downtown. We created a downtown action team. And this downtown action team was a variety of people, and they didn't all like the idea either. But you have to have people who are going to hold your feet to the fire. They did workshops to understand what there was there technically and what could be handled. We had design charrette workshops to design what the downtown would look like. We had public open houses. We had planning booths set up downtown during Canada Day and during one of our block parties. We had community partner workshops. So we partner with the agencies, business associations, Chamber of Commerce, and had workshops with them. We created a meeting in a box. It was a pizza box, and there was a gift certificate in there for pizza. And all the questions were in there that we wanted answered, and you could bring over your baseball team if you wanted to, have some pizza on us and answer the questions. Just make sure you bring them in. Kitchen table works really well for that kind of conversation. Place Speak, again, online conversation. We post information on there, kept it updated, and people will have the conversation with us. And we created an Energized Downtown website and a forum for people to tell us how they felt. We heard, in a nutshell, 5 fundamentals. They want a compact mix of land use and activities. They want a safe, inclusive, and vibrant downtown, a high-quality public realm, winter city design, and create the conditions for successful development. Now that could go into any community. But what we had to do is take what we have in Fort St. John and create the big moves. So Fort St. John is just like Edmonton. Downtown is 100th and 100th. Our 100th and 100th used to be the highway. People still drive it like the highway. And so we were, it was interesting because a lot of the comments that we heard were things like slow traffic, divert the commercial traffic, make it safer for pedestrians, support the arts and entertainment, etc. All these kinds of things. So part of these, I'll go through a few of them. It's all on Place Speak if you're looking for a copy. Provide comfortable, safe, and attractive streetscapes. Slow the pace of traffic. Reconfigure 100th and 100th. Have some snow storage. Instead of having 2 lanes both ways, 3 lanes. Take the middle lane and make it a dedicated left turning lane. Have sidewalks and boulevards, and have restaurants downtown that have sidewalk cafes in the summer, fall. Downtown living. Create more opportunities for people to live in the downtown and to support those local businesses and encourage the vitality and more activity on the street outside of the usual business hours. So just like every other downtown, once the business hours are done, it pretty much shut down. Have any of you ever gone for a ride along with the RCMP? That is entertaining. I was out till 4 o'clock in the morning with the RCMP. You need to change things, and it can be done slowly and gently. They want a market plaza. They want to develop a mixed-use urban plaza with programming and facilities for public year-round events such as markets and festivals. No more vacant land. They want land developed. Now, a lot of the land is vacant because of the brownfield situation. So we're gonna have to work with some of those developers to make sure that we can actually get that land developed. Again, senior levels of government have some constraints around that. Phase 3 that we're moving into is about creating the bylaws and the policy development, land use and development policies, tools and incentives, the permit area design guidelines, and the implementation framework. So I'll give you an idea of some of the stuff we're looking at. I'm all about sharing, because I'm a firm believer that you're never going to live long enough to learn it all yourself. Chilliwack has put in an unsightly premises bylaw. I'm not sure if that's the exact name of it, but it really does ensure that if you're going to have a vacant building, that it's not going to be pressure on our residents and our businesses as taxpayers. Because a lot of times, vacant buildings attract inappropriate activities, we'll say. We're watching that bylaw. So far, the provincial government hasn't put the hammer down and say that you can't do that to someone who has a vacant building. So if that thing manages to keep afloat and no one is challenging it, then we will probably look at putting something like that in. We did move forward on, council put in a resolution that anyone wishing to apply for a business license for adult entertainment, that there wouldn't be a business license put out there until we have some guidelines around where they're going to be. That's a long story. We need to look at how to get appropriate activity. So we have, and every municipality, if you're involved in the municipality or not, we are mandated to provide the sanctuaries of churches with tax exemption. Over the years, a lot of that tax exemption has spread out to their parking lot and everything else. Now, that tax doesn't go away. What happens is the taxes that they would pay for the water and sewer and firefighting and RCMP that everyone pays for just gets taken away from them and spread out over the rest of the taxpayers. So our taxpayers have said to us, whoa, wait a second. Like there are some churches that really go above and beyond, and nonprofits, not just churches, and there are some that you don't see them very often. So we created a benefit-based approach to how much we charge for our public facilities. We're looking at how can we get the churches involved in appropriate activities downtown? How can we get our nonprofit organizations to engage in a more public format? Well, we haven't made a decision yet, but if you want a tax exemption, you might want to be engaging, because it's the taxpayers who are paying your taxes for you. So, why do we want to do all of this? Well, it's about community investment, to assist our businesses with recruiting and retaining the professionals. Because remember, they're an echo. We don't have as many of them. So we need to do whatever we can to attract them. The Petroleum HR Council of Canada did a study on how to increase the talent, how to recruit to hard to recruit to locations. And you have to understand the decision-making process when someone comes into the labor pool. And they look at the industry that they want to get into, and they look at what it is that they want to do for a living. You could become an engineer, but you could work in 5 different industries. Well, how do I make sure that you're coming to my town? I need to create something that's going to be attractive to bring you there. And the Gen X, Gen Y, Echoes, whatever you want to call them, are looking for something different than I was looking for. So key decision-making process of new talent is a driver for creating some of this in the downtown. Another one is creating residential areas in your downtown core means that there's going to be people that are doing appropriate activities, and if something inappropriate is happening outside, they can dial 911. Whereas if there was no one there, then that activity could carry on. So what happens is your RCMP costs rise. And it was mentioned that I sit on the contract management for the RCMP. Well, those contract management, the RCMP costs are going to increase further. Does anyone know of anything that's actually shrinking in price, by the way? At any rate, you need to have a really good, robust knowledge of your community. As I said, you will never be everything to everyone, but you can be a whole lot of stuff to a whole lot of people. And that's where you focus your energy, and that's where you focus that sliver of funds. You may not like what you're going to hear, but you have to have a good conversation with your community. You cannot fear what you're going to hear. You need to understand it all. Some people cannot wrap criticism constructively to hand it over, sorry. But if you block the criticism, you're going to block what they're going to hear. So you just really have to hear and open your eyes to it. Fort St. John is dynamic. We are growing. We have lots of young families. We have a very supportive community that lives energetically. And that's us in a nutshell. We are going to continue to tackle everything by creating a vision, remaining focused. We're not going to get distracted by the shiny things, and we need to implement, follow through on the golf swing, make sure you've got a framework to achieve it. City of Fort St. John is very supportive of responsible resource development, and we will continue on that path. But we understand that we must build vital, permanent, sustainable communities, because that's the only way we can ensure quality of life and quality of experience for the residents that are going to be moving to Fort St. John. Growing at 3% a year, that's a healthy, very healthy growth rate. We need to ensure that families and businesses are able to grow and to thrive. And more importantly, and I can say this because I'm there, the boomers want to retire, and they need succession planning. Municipalities are not ad hoc, and using the vernacular during the Let's Talk Site C conversations, it is not about joining the Make the Lake Committee or the Dam Society. It is about ensuring that we're proactive and promoting and protecting our community. I want to thank you for this opportunity to come, and all of you are welcome to come up to Fort St. John. And I just want to say, if we aren't prepared to invest in our community, why would you expect anyone else to? Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. We have time for questions, so if people have questions, the gentleman in the back there has a hand.
I'm interested in your comments about taxes, and I'm aware that there's worldwide, at least in the industrialized countries, a bit of a movement back to city-states. How is FCM and UBCM involved in that as a group that's large enough to talk realistically with government about the notion that there should be a more direct tax made with the federal government. Can you speak to that, please?
Well, I would love to.
Another hour?
Pretty much, because so we're governed by the Community Charter and the Local Government Act. If we got out of line, the province does have the ability to come in and shut down a municipal government, fire everyone who is elected and their staff, and start over again. I would think that if there was ever going to be a movement afoot, it would not come from the councils within the municipal government itself. It would come from me as a voter. It would come as me as a resident of British Columbia and a resident of Canada. That's the only way that changes like that are going to be made. UBCM and FCM are wonderful associations, but I don't think that they are associations who have the power to do what you're talking about. Taxation, now you're getting into fair share, and I can come back tomorrow. It's going to take us as voters to make those changes, but I agree. There are other societies that have that, and that's a very good question. And Garth Frizzell, did he sneak out? Of course he did. Garth is actually on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and that would be a good question for him.
So, my name's Ryan. I'm relatively new to BC, Prince George in particular, and I don't know too much about how the tax disbursement, I guess, stuff works. So, you said about 8% goes to municipalities, and you said that Fort St. John is about 26,000 people, and I guess Prince George is what, somewhere around 80,000 as well. So, does it come directly from your community? Like, for instance, I imagine with oil and gas, Fort St. John probably has an average income that might be slightly higher than the average income in Prince George. I don't know, I'm just assuming. So, how do you think those budgets kind of line up between the two communities, and do a lot of the same type of projects that you guys do? Like, would they be sustainable here, and does that make sense?
We're doing them on a different scale than Prince George would do them. So I don't know what Prince George's budget is. Oil and gas is not inside of the city of Fort St. John. That's why I don't get to tax it. That's why we've always had fair share. Fair share was based on the royalties and the land sales, but it was hinged directly to property taxation, which is what made it legitimate to have in the first place. So I'm not sure what Prince George's budget is. I'm not sure if I can answer your question, but a municipality works off of property taxes, which is a regressive tax. And if you're interested in more about how the property tax works, there's Institute of Property, or International Property Tax Institute, IPTI.com, I'm thinking, or org, and they have a lot of information. They've got some really good workshops on what property tax or how municipalities could change, which might address even talking about, you know, the city-state. But I can tell you there's a lot of pushback from Canada on that.
Two things. One is you talked about having to look globally, and then in the same presentation you talk about sustainability, and I'm assuming that means that you're going to bring people in, and when you're done with them you'll just kick them back out because your kids now have enough experience and enough training to do the job that you want them done. So it was a weird sort of comment, or the way you presented it, I guess, was really weird for me.
Okay.
And
So
well, that's just one point of it. I don't know necessarily a response to that part.
Oh no, I would love to answer that.
Okay.
So how about if we talk about, so the city of Fort St. John does look at things sustainably. And we actually have built North America's most northern passive house. And we have, the only other passive house further north than us is in Scotland, and they don't have the climate we do. So we seriously do look at things. We are BC's energy capital, and the cheapest form of energy is conservation. So we take our position very seriously when it comes to that. So when you talk about bringing people in and then not needing them anymore, my grandparents were immigrants to this country. And we have a very diverse population in Fort St. John. We celebrate that. That is our cultural vitality, and I'd never kick them out.
The second thing that really struck me and actually was kind of an insult for me as an Aboriginal person, because the comment directly was, because I wrote it down right away, only salmon swim upstream to die. Salmon swim upstream to ensure the continuation of their species. And I think you really need to work on that line somewhere, because it was quite insulting as an Aboriginal person.
Okay.
I really took offense to that, and I really am disappointed to hear something like that from you.
I'm sorry, it was never meant to be insulting. I had never even thought of it that way, but thank you very much for bringing that to my attention.
I was interested in your comments about the official community plan. Do you adhere to that? Because a lot of communities don't. They're constantly altering.
Yes.
You do. You know, you say you have that on your desk. And,
Yep.
Because we have that situation in the story all the time, where developers seem to control the situation. Do you have urban sprawl?
No, because we're surrounded by very tight rural development around us. We just had a situation on Monday where a developer was looking for something outside of what was in our official community plan, and staff were asking us if we needed to, look at the housing aspects of the official community plan. And we said no, because as I mentioned, a community is like a 5,000 piece puzzle. When you change housing, you change a lot of other things around it. And so, no, leave the housing as is. And when we revisit our official community plan, we will revisit housing at that time.
So are you encouraging housing in your downtown area?
Yes. We're looking for any new development would have a housing mix added to it. And we're encouraging, if people have space to put residential in it, or if they are redoing it, then they would add residential to it.
Lori, thanks for your presentation. In the last election that I ran and was successful, a lot of my constituents are just outside the city of Windsor boundary. We're saying, you know, Steve, we care more about how Windsor is developing and growing, rather than the fact that, yes, we know you're going to be a great director, but we care more about that. So how do you bring that rural concern into the fact that a lot of constituents that live on what we call the rural fringe and have a concern that Williams X serves as a service center, if you will, for rural areas that surround Williams?
So the regional district has a legislation that they must abide by. And it's very difficult to try and have consistency across, because most people live in the rural area because they don't want to live in the city. And so if they're looking for parity, then it needs to, it's just like when Augustus Caesar decided to tax everybody. It's an all or nothing kind of thing. So the decision on how do you move forward in a rural area, you can incorporate. Otherwise, it's really, really difficult to get that.
One of the best ways to that I found to experience a city or any place, particularly for somebody who is new or visiting, is on foot. And you guys have done a really nice job with the trail system that circles your downtown. But most of the visitors are probably in a hotel downtown. And I think there could be opportunities to better connect the downtown to that trail system. It isn't that far; it's only a kilometer or so. But it's not really attractive to make that connection as it stands.
So part of our development guidelines, every new development must connect to the trail system. Yeah. So we're working on that. Yeah.
So I appreciate your comments at the beginning around, what you're seeing in Prince George Isaac. So I just want to make a comment about one of the distractions, I'll call it, that Prince George is facing, but then I do have a question for you. With the booming economies all over the north, one of the biggest surprises for Prince George has been we are the recipient of many people who can no longer afford to live in booming economies. And I would say that it's more than a distraction, it's approaching crippling for Prince George right now. Speak with anybody at the hospital or an outreach in the downtown almost a distraction or a swamp to walk around. That's probably a bad turn of phrase, but so that's been a real surprise for Prince George. So good, bad, or otherwise, I'm just wondering what's been one of the biggest surprises for you in the public consultation process or in designing your revitalization line? Something that you didn't predict, but is now in play.
I think that, you know, when the big moves came out, some of the things that we really did not expect was so many people see us as a community full of riggers. You know, that there's the people work on the rigs and they come in and, you know, Fort St. John is a community of big trucks and very few people walking because the sidewalks are need to be redone. They wanted walkability, and they wanted the downtown cafes. You know, when I think of everything that they're looking for, if I could just take Kitsilano and move it up and plunk it, that's what they're looking for. But that's the younger generation. Those are our young professionals that want to come up. So what wasn't mentioned was I used to be the Salvation Army Family Service Director, and back when there was issues with the softwood lumber and everything else, and the oil and gas industry was doing very well, we had a lot of people move north looking for work. And so overnight, we experienced that. You do what you can. It's very, very difficult. I know you hear a lot in the news about how Vancouver is moving towards dealing with their housing, etc. We operate by the community charter. Vancouver has a Vancouver charter, and their Vancouver charter is more robust on housing than ours is. We rely on BC Housing. So what we do is we will go to Victoria with a solution. And we have an affordable housing committee that worked for 2 years understanding affordable housing. And they came forward with recommendations. And that is another set of recommendations that whenever a developer comes forward and they have some changes, if they don't fall into place with that affordable housing recommendation, they need to take it back to the drawing board. Our number one recommendation from the Affordable Housing Committee was affordable market housing. We have a lot of people who are in rental properties because they cannot get into a market home. What they've done in Fort McMurray and what we have copied, and you may have heard something on CBC about our illegal suites issue, a single family home with a secondary suite. The owner lives there. It's a mortgage assistance program because they can rent the basement out. So the owner lives there and there's off-street parking. When your children grow up and you need the basement and you've got your feet firmly in your career, you can take down the firewall, say goodbye to your tenant, and you have a full basement. Moving them along through the housing continuum helps. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think, you know, certainly in Prince George, we're seeing different levels of needs, if you will. But certainly we're also seeing people who just, you know, need a bed, let alone are looking for market housing or need a meal that day. So, you know, my understanding is a lot of other northern communities, their social service system is being taxed. And so Prince George is a very attractive place to try and access the services a little bit more.
We're also working on a social framework, and that is something that will bring all of our continuum of social recreation together. So everything from our disenfranchised population, our disenfranchised citizens, our vulnerable population, right through to arts and culture, etc. And how do we ensure that we have a framework to support our community in this resource development if it goes forward? We're going to feel it, and we need to support that fabric so it doesn't get shredded. So that's something else we're working on.
Going back to the city states and what I call a foot in the door, how could you speak to your relationship with the city and the regional district, and much more specific than that, maybe first, talk about the Wood Buffalo Regional Municipality, and whether that is
So years ago, there was a process before I got involved in politics called the grassroots, and it looked at exactly that. How do you create, how do you resolve the issue, right? We had a taxation review where Dr. Sammy Hamilton came up in 2009 and said, you need to clean up your boundaries because it's costing you money to operate. And that is very difficult to do because the Ministry of Community, Culture and Sport Development, sorry, I can never remember exactly what they are all the time. They do not have a actual process laid out to do a boundary extension. So it's very onerous and took us 2 years to bring in a couple of acres of land. So Wood Buffalo is an example of what happened when a municipality tried to service a very large industrial area. Everyone understands, Fort Mac has a connotation. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever met Melissa Blake. Melissa is their mayor. She's a wonderful person and she has done extraordinary work. But they are pulling themselves out of that connotation. Fort Mac is a remarkable community. And they are only pulling themselves out because the Alberta government recognized that they were not going to thrive in the shape they were in, and that's when they became a regional municipality. Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, Fort Nelson, did the same thing. They became a regional municipality. Is that something that British Columbia is going to wholeheartedly embrace? We don't know. We had two choices years ago. Either go with a regional municipality or fair share.
There was a woman at the back actually that had a question before.
Thank you. So my question is about Fort St. John. My question is about Fort St. John in Northeast BC. You're of course an economic powerhouse for the rest of the province. And I'm wondering if you've done this presentation beyond hope, as you say, where the public opinion is perhaps less favorable towards oil and gas. And if you haven't, if you were to, what would be some of the key messages that you would bring?
Yeah, no, I've done this. I've done it a few times down there, and I was just called to go out to New Brunswick as well. And I'm going again out to Kitimat. That'll be the third time I've gone out to Kitimat. So yeah, I've been down there.
And the message was the same.
Yeah, the message is the same. The reality is, we live in a society that requires energy. And I, as the mayor of BC's energy capital, as I said, the best energy is the stuff we save. Because then we don't have to pull any more out. We don't have magic ceilings and magic walls. This has come to us. And we all leave a footprint. Every industry leaves a footprint. If anything happened to Vancouver right now, they would not be able to rebuild Vancouver because they've broken a lot of environmental laws to get where they are. So the reality is that we are all in this together.
So you talked about attracting kind of younger generation to your city. How is it that there's a, picking up Kitsilano, putting it in, like you were saying, that there is, until you attract that demographic, the majority of the people, were they still wanting that change already? Like, how did you shift the culture to wanting the influence on downtown in the way that you talk about here, when, Prince George, the Performing Arts Center, all the stuff that people want to do in downtown, the majority still navigates what City Hall decides. So is there a cultural, where's that turning point? Where's that tipping point?
In 2002, I think it was, there was a royalty program for the oil and gas industry that allowed for summer drilling. And just that one policy changed took us from 4 months of hair straight back to a 12-month year-round industry. And so what happened was the professions needed to move up because they had to service the industry year-round. And so the young professionals were starting to move up. And we now have just that core of people who are getting involved in the community that are saying, they're putting their foot down and they're saying, this is our community and this is what we want it to look like. And we respect the fact that you know, you're retiring, but we need something that looks good, and yes, we're willing to pay for it.
So it was a core group in particular, not necessarily the majority population that initially that voiced their opinions on this.
So it started in before 2011 when we did our official community plan. We heard it again in Site C conversations, and so we're bringing it forward. And this is what the community is telling us through our conversation, is this is the way it needs to happen. I think it was just, you know, you get to a certain point in your population where it starts to shift. Society has done that many times over the years, and we found it.
Just to like kind of expand on what you just talked about. So for instance, I'm a part of a couple of different like grassroots communities here in Prince George with entrepreneurship and music and like Shauna mentioned, with the performing arts community, there's a lot of you know musicians and performing arts and everything that want that. I'm involved in like entrepreneurship. We're trying to get like the co-working space, the whole environment kind of going. So how are the people in your community putting their foot down, saying we want this in the community and getting that conversation going with over? Not saying that we're not getting that here, but like in your community, how are people really getting that message across and getting you to understand and partake and listen and do what the community wants to?
They're getting engaged, and we're hearing their voices, and they're not coming at us with placards.
Right.
They're coming to us and having good conversations.
Through what mediums, I guess?
So we have it's kind of like a junior chamber of commerce. It's called Synergy. And it is a group of young professionals that get together on a regular basis. I usually go about once a year to just give them an update on what's going on in the community. And they inform us what it is they want to see in their community. And they get out and vote. And they make sure that we have heard what they want. And they understand, you know, that it's not something that is going to happen overnight. But if there's going to be an evolution, they want to direct it.
So what about healthcare itself for your healthy community? What about the healthcare of the workers, the rurals? Do you partner with other rural communities to bring healthcare workers to Fort Community?
So the regional district has just created 2 pots of funds. One pot is to assist medical professionals in coming to the communities in the Peace Country, and the other pot of funds is to hire a recruiter for Northern Health, specifically for the Peace region. And we have gone out to the residents, the physician residents, and spoke to them about, you know, what would it take to keep them there. And so we have gone above and beyond. I've got 4 more doctors coming this summer. And I phoned the physician residents of BC and I said, what can I do? What more can we do? And he said, actually, Lori, I was thinking of having you go out to other communities and talk about what it is you're doing. No, that's not something I'm sharing. Healthcare is going to be an issue right across Canada. And my mom was a registered nurse. I know very well that doctors cannot stand on, you know, by themselves. They are part of a team of healthcare professionals. So we're working very hard to get an RN school up in the Northeast, because we don't have one. And we're working very hard to go to those who have left the community to go and get their post-secondary education in the healthcare industry and to bring it back. The other thing that we've done is Fort St. John is very supportive of a program called Northern Opportunities. Northern Opportunities has been funded by the Northern Development Initiative Trust for a few years, and it is a very successful program. And it started out by taking children in the K-12 system, and a counselor would, they knew these kids, they'd tap them on the shoulder, and they'd get them into this dual credit program. And the difference in the dual credit for us is that industry is at the table. And our college changed their college year to accommodate the trade school. And so we have increased our graduation rate by 20%. We have the First Nations students increased by 22%. The marks that they are getting when they graduate are higher than they were before. That program has now shifted and has started to get into the social science, health sciences fields. So we're starting to educate our own.
you believe that educating your own is better than bringing in foreign workers?
Yes, and that's why UNBC was built.
How effective does Place Speak as a tool? I know one of our startup developers has actually worked on that program, and we had talked about having it in our community and using it as a tool. But the concern was more that people would go online to actually use it to contribute. Did you find that you had a huge uptake, or is it something that people use just to reference the documents?
No, they used it. Yeah. Mind you, our average age is around 30 years old, too. They were born with a cell phone, I think. Yeah. So there is a bit more of an uptake, but the nice thing is that they can sit down at their computer at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, and put in their responses or their comments.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Lori. I'd like to invite Marlene Morris, who is co-director of the Community Development Institute and an adjunct professor in the Department of Geography at UNBC, to come up and give a few remarks.
Thank you. Thanks. I want to start by thanking Mayor Ackerman, Lori, for being here tonight. As you can tell from her remarks, she is a passionate advocate for Fort St. John. But she is also a passionate advocate for Northern BC in general. I've seen her in different places and communities across the province, bringing communities together, bringing leaders together, and fostering the whole notion of collaboration amongst communities, and particularly amongst rural communities. She is also a very generous leader, and she is willing to share her time and her expertise. So, Lori, thank you so much for being here tonight. And I also would like to take just a moment to thank the team at the Community Development Institute who organized this 2015 Spring Speakers Series. Jennifer Hall, thank you. Danielle Peterson, thank you. And Erin McQuarrie, who is not here with us tonight because she's got a young one at home, all did wonderful work in putting this together, so thank you very much. And of course, thank you to all of you for being here. I mean, we really do, we run a speaker series every spring and every fall, and we hit topics of current interest in the community. And so we are absolutely delighted that you were here tonight to be part of this conversation. Please watch for our fall speaker series. There's also a sign-up sheet at the back if you would like to be on our mailing list. And we look forward to ongoing dialogue on this and other topics of interest. And please feel free to stay to enjoy coffee and cookies tonight. So thank you all for being here.
Glad you made it back safely.
Thanks. Hi.
I spent 10 years in Fort St. John.
Yes, you did.
I think I got out just before you got elected, actually.
Oh.